I'm sorry if I don't sound too good this week. I'm a little sick right now, so if I start to lose my voice at some point here, just bear with me. With this being the first episode of the Summer of Live Impacts, as well as the first one in their new time slot, I would think that TNA would want to start with a bang. You know, pull out all the stops, really make this seem like an eventful, historic show. Maybe do something new and different to signify their new direction as a company. Did they do this? Well, they did have the return of Sting, which they seem to think was a huge deal, but Sting has made these quote-unquote big shocking returns so many times now that it feels about as meaningful as Mick Foley returning to Raw would at this point. Now, they started the show with a Sting versus Bobby Roode lumberjack match they announced last week. Apparently, this was not for the world title after all. I could have sworn Hogan said it was last week, but maybe I heard wrong. Anyway, I don't think I need to go over this. It was a typical Sting match. There weren't any real surprises here. You know, he did do the crossbody over the ropes, so he was trying, he was giving effort at least. It wasn't terrible, but we all pretty much know how this goes. No matter how motivated Sting is, ultimately there's only so much you can do with the guy. I was getting a sinking feeling in my stomach watching this, and sure enough, Bobby Roode loses clean. After he beat Ken Anderson, beat James Storm in a cage match, beat Bob Van Dam in a ladder match, beat AJ Styles, he taps out to an over 50-year-old man who hasn't been in the ring in months. So, same old shit, different day, basically.
This is ridiculous, man, any way you look at it.
Then Hogan says that Sting is the #1 guy in Impact Wrestling? Nice. Very nice. Way to bury every single young talent on the roster with one line, TNA. Nice job.
I don't know what my future holds, but I know one thing.
Screw Sting. Bobby Roode's the world champion. He's the #1 guy, you morons. At least he should be.
You can take this microphone and shove it up your ass.
Then Hogan puts Sting in what should have been James Storm's world title match at Slammiversary. TNA, when you've been trumpeting to anyone who will listen about change, about how your company is evolving, is moving forward, is focusing on building up the young stars of the present and the future, is going back to the well with Sting again really the message you want to send here? Now, I don't believe that Sting is going to win the title. I'm thinking they're going to build up to Roode versus Storm at Bound for Glory, and that's good for Bound for Glory, but it also means that I don't give a rat's ass about the Slammiversary main event now. I am so tired of TNA treating Sting like his farts don't stink, like he's God's gift to everything. I know you're grateful to him for sticking around, but you've got to stop relying on him so much like this. More than anything, he's becoming a crutch for this company. He's holding them back more than he's helping them at this point, and that's not a good thing. Bully Ray came out and told Joseph Park to get in the ring. He challenged Joseph to a fight. He then flat out admitted that he left Abyss for dead somewhere, and long story short, we've got Bully Ray versus Joseph Park at Slammiversary. Another fun segment with these two, but I'm reminded of something I said during the Immortal Takeover storyline. I said, and I quote, "You can bend the rules in pro wrestling, but you can't bullshit us about how the justice system works." Remember a few weeks ago on Raw when Triple H put his hands on Paul Heyman and Heyman threatened him with an assault charge? That was a legal advisor acting like a legal advisor. The Joseph Park character is a lawyer. So why is he not acting like one? Think about this. Bully Ray has committed assault and battery on this man not once, but twice, and is now confessing to attempted murder on national television in front of millions of eyewitnesses. This goes beyond pro wrestling. Why is Joseph Park not doing what any lawyer on earth would do in this situation? Joseph, buddy, these are arrestable offenses. You can have Bully Ray thrown in prison for this. But instead, his response is to agree to face Bully Ray in a wrestling match. Worst lawyer ever.
This whole show is ridiculous.
People are probably going to say I'm nitpicking here, and maybe I am, but stuff like this completely takes me out of a storyline. I can suspend my disbelief pretty far most of the time, but things have to make sense within the context that you've created. If Joseph Park isn't going to act like a lawyer, then just don't make him a lawyer. Make him a businessman or an architect or something. But when you make him a lawyer and don't have him do what any lawyer would do when confronted with these things, believability goes out the window. Especially at a time when you've made such a fuss about taking the product in a more reality-based direction.
This whole show violates everything about my journalistic integrity.
There was a Crimson video package to put over how dominant he is and that he's still undefeated. It was a good video. And it probably would have been a lot more effective if he hadn't just been embarrassed and made to look ridiculous by the comic relief duo of ODB and Eric Young just 2 weeks ago.
I was a war correspondent, and now I'm covering this!
Incidentally, where the hell was this video package when they were trying to get Crimson over as a badass babyface for the last year and a half? Holy shit, we got Chris Sabin versus Austin Aries, and I completely creamed myself.
Yes!
For 3.5 minutes. A criminally short amount of time for something like this, especially considering it's one of the only big X Division matches you can make at this point, but really good for the time it had. I do think Sabin is a tiny bit rusty still. It might take him a little while to get his groove back as a singles wrestler, but a rusty Chris Sabin is still a better worker than most of the people on this roster. They really threw this matchup away. They could have made it out to be a lot more than what it was. That was disappointing. Anyway, Aries wins, and what with those reaction shots, I really thought Sabin was going to turn heel on him for a minute there, but that didn't happen. I love what we got, I just wish there had been more of it. Raise your hand if you were at all surprised that they put the debut of Brooke Hogan in the Hour main event spot. Really? Nah, I'm just fucking with you. So Dixie Carter herself comes out and makes this huge deal out of bringing in D-list celebrity Brooke Hogan to be the new Knockout Authority figure. She spent several minutes trying to make Brooke Hogan out to be the greatest thing to ever happen to women's wrestling. I'm not buying it. The live audience isn't buying it. Brooke is greeted with a pretty mixed reaction from the crowd, but she then acts like they were going completely nuts for her, which they weren't. That was weird. At least they spared us the canned heat this time, but I get the feeling they expected her to get a much bigger reaction than she actually got. So she thanks Dixie, she says how excited she is, and it's this whole big Brooke Hogan love fest, and I'm just sitting here thinking, oh man, the quarter-hour ratings for this segment are going to be really interesting. Brooke's promo was harmless enough. She wasn't incredibly poised or anything, but she didn't bomb like Garrett Bischoff does every time they put a mic in his hand. I appreciate that at least she didn't go the trashy route like Karen Jarrett did, where the knockouts are all skanks and whores and hoes and every other word is bleeped out. I'm not saying I liked it, I didn't. I think it's completely unnecessary, but all told, it probably could have been more painful than it was. However, I do think it's telling that, considering this is the new figurehead intended to push the knockout division to the next level or whatever, aside from a brief pre-tape with Madison Rayne, not a single knockout even appeared on this show. And this was made even worse by the fact that they don't even have a knockout match announced for the pay-per-view yet. I have no idea where they're even going with that yet. Which is exactly what I was afraid of. The Karen Jarrett syndrome, where the authority figure ends up hogging all the spotlight and the knockouts essentially become glorified extras in their own division. Now, apparently there was a segment with the knockouts that was planned, but it got cut due to time constraints. They might have had time for it if they hadn't taken so long building up Brooke Hogan like she's Trish Stratus or something, but hey, welcome to live television. Then was the TV title match where the fans got to vote on who Devon's opponent should be. Now, TNA tried to make it seem like they were giving the power to the fans here, but they really weren't. Because put in a situation where the fans were obviously not going to vote for the guy who's been feuding with Devon for months, you knew they were just going to worm their way out of this and do what they wanted to do anyway, meaning that this whole giving the power to the fans thing was a lie, basically. The second Jeff Hardy came out, everyone and their brother knew the Robbies were just going to cause a DQ and continue this pointless, interminable feud.
Destination? Horror.
And if you're like me, you are probably wondering why on earth Robbie E was even one of the choices in the first place when he's had quite a few title shots recently and failed to get the job done, hasn't even come close. And yes, Dave Lagana, he is the former champion, but my point was that since Devon won the title from him, Robbie E has had numerous rematches, numerous opportunities to win back the TV title, and lost in embarrassing fashion every single time. So my question is, after several months of this, after proving beyond a shadow of a doubt that he is unable to beat Devon, couldn't beat him in a singles match, couldn't beat him in a cage match, couldn't beat him in a triple threat match, after all that, shouldn't Robbie have gone to the back of the line for title contention by now?
This alleged superstar is an unworthy opponent.
What has this character done to earn all these opportunities? Why does he continue to be anywhere near the TV title picture after this many consecutive losses to the champion? Why was he even one of the candidates in the first place? Why not someone like Crimson or Austin Aries or even Bully Ray? Guys that have great arguments to be considered for a TV title shot. How do you even rationalize that? Yes, they're not in storylines with Devon, but from a logic standpoint, how does a guy who's been undefeated for a year and a half get passed up for a title shot so some loser who hasn't won a match in months can get another one?
I cannot and will not demean myself by engaging this ignoramus this evening.
We had a James Storm update. Yay! They showed a video package about how he's doing at home right now. It wasn't that long, but it got over that he's still doubting himself and questioning his career, but him and Bobby Roode is still unresolved. And this was great. It was honest and realistic. There was real emotion there, and that's the kind of stuff that James Storm brings to the table. It's not an accident that James Storm is routinely one of the best, if not the best part of this show, and damn it, he needs to come back to TV soon. These gut check segments have been a really pleasant surprise. I actually find myself looking forward to the gut check all month long now because they've been really well done. Yeah, we saw the backstage segment with the three judges discussing Joey Ryan, his character, his performance versus his look, and is his look a good fit with what they're doing and the direction they want to go in. I think ultimately I was leaning towards siding with Pritchard, but all of them made some really good points. And I'm sure there's plenty of wrestling pundits that are going to crap on this for the insider jargon and all that stuff, and that's actually what I like best about this. It doesn't seem fake or scripted. They're playing it straight, they're not trying to bullshit the audience, it feels realistic, it feels like there's something genuinely at stake here, which makes me more invested. And ironically, I think that's where Joey Ryan kind of screwed himself. He was showing character, his promo was good, he was over with the crowd, wrestling-wise he outperformed Alex Silva from last month, but when he had to sell himself to the judges, he stayed in kayfabe when they seemed to want him to shift into shoot mode and get serious. I guess he didn't get the memo that this was supposed to be reality-based. So when he didn't do that, I think they took it as him disrespecting them, and the rest was history. So no contract for Joey Ryan. And personally, I'm ambivalent about that. I was on the fence with him. If they signed him, I wouldn't have complained, but I'm not really bothered that they didn't sign him either. Really compelling couple of segments. The Ryan Taz argument was awesome. It's just a shame that nothing came of it. Already looking forward to the next gut check, though. Then we had the main event, AJ Styles versus Christopher Daniels. Again, I don't think I need to go over this. It was Styles and Daniels. Was it a great match? Of course. You know how good it was. You've seen it. I've seen it. We've all seen it. We've seen it 100 times. That's the problem. They've beaten this horse to death so often over the years that there's nothing interesting about it anymore, unless you're bringing something new to the equation. And that's probably not going to happen. They've done everything to each other in a wrestling match that they could possibly do. I'm not discounting the effort involved, but I was only half paying attention to this. Couldn't they at least have done AJ versus Kazarian instead? AJ wins, then Daniels and Kaz play this phone conversation of AJ and Dixie. Am I the only one wondering where they're getting all this evidence from? Then Dixie yells at the announcers to cut the feed, and that's what we fade out on. Dixie Carter's involvement was interesting in that there's obviously something that she wants to keep secret here, although they are leaving that window open where it can be easily explained away as something innocent. I hope there's more to it than that. I actually like them ending the show like this because it gave the impression that it was a live show where anything can happen. Now, some people thought it was a production gaffe. I kind of think they did it that way on purpose, which was a cool touch, although I wouldn't want them to do this every week. For the first of the summer of live impacts, I thought this could have gone a lot worse. The production was pretty smooth, the live streaming on YouTube during commercial breaks was a cool touch. The biggest problem was time management issues that need to be handled better so they don't have to cut entire segments out. Creatively, though, it was a mixed bag. I didn't care for a lot of the decisions they made. AJ and Daniels is very old and tired now. Sting beating Bobby Roode clean is something that just should not be happening in 2012. The crap with the Robbies feels like it's never going to end. There wasn't a big push for Slammiversary. A lot of that card looks like it's going to be thrown together at the last minute now.
You people are fools!
But I liked the gut check, I liked Sabin Aries, a couple other things. The show being live now, I don't see how it made much of a difference personally, but maybe it's just a general atmosphere they're going for. As for this TNA Hall of Fame thing, am I the only one who thinks this announcement fell flat? Your company's only 10 years old. Does it really need a Hall of Fame just yet? In another 10 or 15 years, okay, but right now this just feels premature and unnecessary. Almost everyone you'd think would be eligible to be inducted into this is still on the active roster. Inducting them now isn't going to mean anything, and I guess Jarrett would be the exception. I'm sorry, it just feels way too soon for this in my opinion.
Thank you for your irrelevant opinion.
Middle of the road show this week. I didn't hate it, but I didn't have a ton of good things to say about it either. Stay tuned for the Go Home show, where hopefully we'll finally get the full Slammiversary card. See you next week.